They were trying to rob me while I slept. I didn't even flinch. I heard them whispering in the hallway, not loud, but careless. The way people speak when they think you're too old or too deaf to hear. Footsteps, a door creaking, then the rustle of paper, drawers opening, the unmistakable clink of keys being moved and tested. And then, silence. Either they didn't find what they were looking for, or they didn't like what they did find. I lay still. I've learned that silence, at my age, is stronger than shouting. And I've learned that when people believe you're weak, they get sloppy. When morning came, I made oatmeal, fed Bella, my cat, and set 2 mugs on the table like I always do. One for me, one for my granddaughter when she wakes up. I didn't mention the noise, the keys, or the fact that someone tried to go through the drawer in my nightstand. Instead, I hummed a hymn from church and watched the sunlight crawl across the kitchen floor. Jason was already up by then, sitting on the couch in his boxers, phone in hand, pretending he hadn't tried to steal from me. His girlfriend, Brielle, still snoring down the hall. I offered him coffee. He muttered something, didn't look me in the eye. That told me everything I needed. By 11, I was dressed in my navy coat, the one with the loose button, the key to the Toyota in my right pocket, my house key in my left, but not the spare set. That one I slid into a plastic bag, tucked into my purse. I drove into town like I always do on Thursdays, made a stop at the pharmacy, picked up my blood pressure pills, exchanged pleasantries with Lorraine at the counter. "You're glowing today," she said. "Got somewhere nice to be?" "Just breakfast," I smiled. "Maybe a little mischief." Then I went to Miller's Diner, the only place in Hastings that still plays Ella Fitzgerald from an actual jukebox. I ordered eggs over easy, rye toast, and coffee. Sat in the booth by the window, the one with the chip in the glass shaped like a fishhook. Officer Buckley came in around noon, like he always does on his lunch break. We've known each other since he was a boy in Scouts. He still calls me Mrs. Rowland, even though I've told him to call me Virginia. He nodded politely, tipped his hat. I motioned to the booth across from me. "Sit, if you like." He smiled, slid into the seat. "Everything all right?" "Oh, yes," I said, stirring cream into my coffee. "Though I do find myself a bit forgetful these days." He raised an eyebrow. "Anything serious?" "No, nothing like that. Just silly little things, like forgetting where I put my keys." I reached into my purse, took out the spare set, house, car, even the old safe key from the basement, and set them right on the table. The ring made a soft clink against the formica surface. "Well," I said, "there they are." He looked at them, then at me. "You want me to hold on to them?" "Oh, no. I just thought I'd leave them here. Seems like the safest place in town." He didn't ask questions, not the direct kind, but his eyes changed, sharper, more aware. "Everything okay at home?" I smiled, lifted my coffee. "Home is exactly what it looks like, Thomas. Until it isn't." We sat a while longer, watching the light shift in the window. He ate his sandwich. I finished my eggs. When I stood to leave, I deliberately left the keys behind, resting neatly by his half-empty glass of lemonade. He looked down at them, then up at me. "Virginia?" "Hold on to them for me," I said gently, "just in case someone else comes looking." I walked out without another word. In the parking lot, I saw my reflection in the car window. Hair pinned, face lined, coat a little too big. I looked like someone easy to forget. Someone harmless. Let them keep thinking that. When people smile with their teeth but not their eyes, you learn to keep your guard up. They came over that evening, my son Daniel and his wife Lisa. Lisa brought a pie from the store, still in its plastic container. Daniel kissed my cheek without looking at me. I knew that kind of kiss. I used to give it to my mother when I needed her to sign something. They sat on the couch like guests in a waiting room, fidgety and forced. I poured them sweet tea and brought out the lemon bars I'd made that morning. Real lemon, not the powdered mix. Lisa took one, but didn't eat it. She was on one of her detox kicks, I supposed. "We just wanted to check in on you," Daniel said. That was a lie. They never just checked in. Every visit had a purpose, a form to sign, a paper to notarize, a question about downsizing. Once it was a glossy brochure for a retirement village in Tampa. Today, Daniel pulled out a manila envelope from his coat. "It's nothing urgent," he said, sliding it onto the coffee table like a dealer laying down a card. "Just something to think about." Lisa smiled that strained smile, her eyes flitting toward the hallway, the one leading to the bedroom where my safe used to be. She probably assumed the money was still there. They both did. But that money moved months ago. And the safe? Empty, aside from some photographs and a single silver spoon I'd kept from my wedding set. I sipped my tea and didn't touch the envelope. "What's this about?" I asked, as if I didn't already know. Daniel shifted. "Just a small update to the property deed. Nothing major. It would make things easier down the road." "Easier for who?" He hesitated. "For all of us." I smiled, soft but cool. "I've managed just fine up to now. I suppose I can handle the rest of the road myself." Lisa cleared her throat. "It's not about control, Virginia. We just want to make sure you're protected, and that Jason, well, that he doesn't take advantage of you." Interesting, I thought. Now Jason was a problem. "Is that what you're worried about? Jason?" Daniel jumped in quickly. "Not just him. We just thought, if something were to happen, it would be good to have everything set up. Clean and simple. Simple." That's what I used to be to them. A simple woman with a simple house and simple money. A source, not a person. I set my glass down, leaned forward, hands on my knees. "Daniel, do you remember how old you were when your father died?" His face pinched. "I was 16. "That's right. And who kept this house after he was gone? Who paid for your schooling when your scholarships didn't cover it? Who lent you money when your first business failed? Was that simple?" He looked away. Lisa fidgeted with her ring. I didn't wait for an answer. "Leave the envelope, if it makes you feel better. I'll look it over." They stayed another 20 minutes, made small talk about the weather and the construction near the church. Then they left, Daniel kissing my cheek again. Dry, impersonal, perfunctory. When the door closed, I locked it. Not just the knob, the deadbolt, the chain. Then I walked to the hallway and slid the manila envelope into the fireplace. No ceremony, no anger. Just one clean match and a single flame. By the time Jason returned that night, smelling like cheap beer and cheaper cologne, the ashes had cooled. He didn't ask about my day. Didn't notice the missing keys. Didn't notice much of anything. But I noticed him. Every word, every slurred threat, every glance at the cupboard where I kept the extra cash, now empty. Every twitch in his jaw when I said, "The bank called today." Something about unusual activity. He paled for a second, then laughed. "Probably a scam." "Probably," I said, and smiled like I believed him. But I didn't. I was building something behind my quiet. And they, every single one of them, were going to walk into it like they owned the place. Just wait. The house still smelled like pine cleaner and old wood, but the feeling inside had shifted. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Jason had claimed the living room, his boots by the door, his hoodie slung over the arm of my favorite chair, fast food wrappers piled up on the coffee table, the cushions stained with something I didn't want to identify. The remote was always lost somewhere between his legs or under Brielle's purse. And Brielle, she treated my house like a motel with bad service. Left her curling iron plugged in, borrowed my lotion without asking, once even used my toothbrush because, as she said with a giggle, I thought it was one of the extras. I'd never seen someone laugh while stealing. I didn't say anything that day. I just went to the pharmacy and bought a new toothbrush, the good kind. Soft bristles. I hid it behind the towels in the linen closet. I was getting better at hiding things. The kitchen was no better. They'd stopped cleaning up after themselves. There were smudges on the fridge handle, sticky spills dried into the floor tiles, dishes that sat in the sink for 3 days before I finally gave up and washed them. Not for them, for me. I didn't like living in filth. But I was starting to understand the language of mess. It wasn't laziness. It was something worse. It was a message. This is ours now. At night, I slept with my door locked. Not because I was afraid. Fear was an emotion I'd packed away long ago, like winter coats in the attic. No, I locked it because I was done pretending we were family. One morning, I caught Brielle going through my mail. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. Just smiled and said, "Sorry, thought it was mine." But her fingers were holding a bank statement with my name on it. That was the same day I went to the hardware store and had the locks changed. All of them. Front door, back door, garage, even the mailbox. I told Jason I lost my keys. He grunted and didn't ask questions. The next day, I removed his name from the emergency contact list at my bank. The day after that, I made an appointment with a lawyer. That's how you dismantle a siege. Not with confrontation, not with screaming, but with paper and signatures. With quiet. I started keeping receipts, not just financial ones, emotional ones too. A list in my notebook. Oct 3. Jason took $20 from my purse. Didn't ask. Oct 7. Brielle wore my mother's locket. Said she found it on the dresser. Oct 9. Jason slammed the door hard enough to crack the frame. Each one a tiny betrayal. Small enough to ignore if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. Not anymore. I still made dinner most nights. Still laid out 3 plates. Still listened to their stories about jobs they never kept and friends who owed them money. I laughed when it was expected. Nodded when silence would have made things awkward. I was still the old woman in the corner of the room. Invisible, polite, unthreatening. But while they talked, I was building timelines in my head. What day did Jason open that account at that shady bank in the strip mall? What night did Brielle leave and come back with perfume on her coat and my necklace in her pocket? What hour, exactly, did they try to steal my keys? I knew it all. I had it all. It was almost ready. At night, I sat in my bedroom, phone in hand, and reread the text from Officer Buckley. "Let me know when you're ready. I'm listening." That was all he wrote. Simple, direct. And I would let him know. When the trap was fully set. People think traps are built with rope and steel, but mine was made of paper, time, and patience. I started by opening a new account at First Hastings Community Credit Union. Smaller bank. Friendly clerks. Less questions. I wore my church sweater and used my quiet voice. Told them I wanted to move some money, keep things tidy. In 2 visits, I'd transferred nearly everything out of the joint account Jason thought he still had access to. I left just enough for him to believe the well hadn't run dry, enough for him to keep using my debit card for gas and beer and takeout, thinking I hadn't noticed. I noticed. I also noticed when he tried to access the old safe in the closet. I'd removed everything months ago: documents, bonds, my husband's old .38 that hadn't fired in 20 years. In its place, I'd left 2 expired credit cards and a stack of grocery coupons from 1998. Let them have it. Then I went to see Helen Schuster, my lawyer since 1983. She used to be fresh out of law school when she helped us with the business paperwork for our appliance store. Now she had gray streaks at her temples and a leather-bound appointment book that smelled like pipe tobacco. She looked at me over her glasses. "Jason again?" I nodded. Helen didn't ask for details. She just opened a folder, pulled out a clean stack of documents, and said, "We'll set up a revocable trust. Name your own beneficiaries. Make it clear what happens if you're incapacitated. You'll have total control." "And if he contests it?" I asked. She smiled like a woman who'd seen her share of courtroom fools. "He won't win. He's not the first grandson to think blood guarantees an inheritance." I didn't smile back. "It's not about the money." "I know." She handed me a pen. That afternoon, I filed a police report. Not a formal complaint, not yet. Just a written note of concern for record-keeping. The young officer at the desk looked confused. "Are you saying they're threatening you?" "No," I said, calm as a lake. "I'm saying they're trespassing in my life, and I'd like that on paper." He didn't quite get it, but he filled out the form anyway. Then I stopped by Miller's Diner again. Same table, same chipped window. Officer Buckley wasn't there yet, so I left an envelope with Diane, the waitress who's been refilling my coffee since 2004. "Can you give this to Tom when he comes in?" She nodded. "Of course, hun. Everything okay?" "Everything's exactly as it should be," I said. Inside the envelope, photocopies of my bank statements with the withdrawals Jason made. A photo of the new bruises on my wrist. Not from violence, just a hard grab when I tried to take my keys back one morning. A list of Brielle's aliases. 3 names, 2 addresses, and 1 mugshot I found online. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. Later that week, Jason asked, "Hey, you been moving money around?" I looked up from my crossword. "What makes you say that?" "Some of my cards got declined." "Oh, well," I said, setting my pencil down. "Maybe you've been overspending." He stared at me a little too long, but I didn't blink. "You hiding something?" "Yes," I said. "My patience." He didn't understand what I meant. That was fine. He would. That night, I slid my notebook into the drawer next to my bed. It was heavier now, full of dates, receipts, names, times, evidence. Proof that I wasn't senile. I wasn't forgetful. I wasn't helpless. I was waiting. Let them think I was frail. Let them laugh behind closed doors, whisper about how I'd lost it. Because the woman they were underestimating was about to become the woman they feared. The second time I left the keys on the table, it wasn't an accident. I waited until Saturday morning, just past 11. The diner was full of the usual noise: silverware clinking, old men arguing about baseball, Diane yelling, "Order up," like it was a commandment from the mountaintop. I walked in with my beige handbag, the one nobody ever looked at twice. Inside, a manila folder with neatly clipped documents, 2 printed emails, and 1 photo I wasn't sure I'd ever be brave enough to look at again, and my spare keys. the ones Jason still thought I'd misplaced. Officer Buckley was already there, in his usual seat near the back. Not in uniform today. Jeans, leather jacket, reading something on his phone. He looked tired, but he stood up the second he saw me. "Mrs. Rowland?" He nodded. I smiled. "Still pretending I'm a Mrs., I see." He pulled out the chair across from him. "You didn't text. Figured you might have changed your mind." "I almost did." I sat down. Then I found this under my sink. I slid the photo across the table. A plastic baggie, half filled with white powder, tucked inside an old tin of breath mints. I'd discovered it by accident while reaching for a sponge, and I knew, without a doubt, it wasn't mine. Buckley didn't touch the photo, just stared at it, then looked at me. "You okay?" "I've been better." "You want me to take this formally?" "Not yet," I said. "I'm not ready for handcuffs on the porch." He gave a short nod. "Understood. What do you want?" "To be believed," I said. "And when the time comes, to be backed." He leaned forward slightly. "You've got that. But I need more than just trust. I need a pattern. I need risk. I need motive." I opened the folder. Pages slid out across the table. My notes, in clean handwriting. Dates of suspicious activity. Jason's employment record, or rather the lack of one. Brielle's 2 prior arrests, petty theft and possession. Buckley read in silence, jaw tight. "I've got a friend in adult services," he said finally. "They've been tracking elder exploitation cases. It's getting worse every year. Most folks don't say anything until it's too late." "I'm not most folks." "No," he agreed. "You're not." I reached into my bag and pulled out the spare keys, placing them gently next to his coffee cup. "Same as last time?" He looked at them, then at me. "You sure?" "Yes." Because what Jason didn't know, what none of them knew, was that those weren't just spare keys. They were the originals. And last week, I'd installed cameras. One in the kitchen, one facing the hallway, one in the den, disguised inside a smoke detector. The footage uploaded automatically to a cloud server Officer Buckley helped me set up. He reached out slowly, pocketed the keys, didn't say another word. We ate in silence for a few minutes. He finished his sandwich. I picked at a scone. Before I left, I leaned in and whispered, "He thinks I'm just confused, that I leave things lying around. And you let him believe that?" I smiled. "I let everyone believe what's easiest. Until it's not." As I walked out, I saw the reflection of myself in the glass door. Spine straight, face calm, coat neat. An old woman, yes, but not a broken one. Back at home, Jason was asleep on the couch. The TV was playing a rerun of something violent. Brielle was outside, vaping in her pink slippers. I walked past both of them without a word, went to my bedroom, and locked the door. Because some wars aren't fought with weapons. They're won with silence, strategy, and the simple act of refusing to be erased. The first explosion wasn't with fists. It was with shouting, and it rattled the walls more than any punch ever could. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. I was trimming the roses out front, my knees aching and my gloves damp with sweat, when the front door slammed so hard it startled the birds off the fence. Jason's voice followed, sharp, uncontrolled. "Where the hell is it?" I didn't turn around, just kept trimming. Footsteps behind me, fast, heavy. The screen door slapped open. "Grandma!" I straightened up, slowly. "Yes?" "Did you move the bank card?" I peeled off one glove and tucked it under my arm. "Which card?" He stepped off the porch and came toward me like I owed him something. His hands were twitchy, his jaw locked. The blue one, the one you said I could use? I said you could use it for groceries. Well, I tried to get groceries and gas, and both times it got declined. I met his eyes. Then I guess we're out of money. He laughed, but it didn't sound real. Cut the act, Grandma. I saw the balance 2 weeks ago. You're not broke. I held his gaze. You saw it without my permission then. You're messing with me, he snapped, voice rising. You think this is funny? No, I said. I think it's sad. He paced now, the way he always did when his mind started running faster than his sense. You moved the money. You're hiding things. Not hiding, I said. Protecting. From what? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Brielle came out onto the porch then, arms crossed, her tank top too thin for October and her eyeliner smudged. Jason, what's going on? She's screwing with us, he barked. She cut me off. Brielle looked at me like I was a broken ATM. Seriously? After everything we've done for you? I looked from one to the other. The porch, the yard, the street behind them. All of it mine. I think it's time you both started doing something for yourselves. Jason's face twisted. We live here. We help out. You live here because I let you. And the only help I've seen is you helping yourself to my wallet and my time. That's when he took a step toward me. Just one. But that was enough. I dropped my shears, walked past him, stepped up the porch and into the house. In the living room, I turned on the old radio. Static at first, then music. Ella Fitzgerald, soft and unshaken. I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat down at the kitchen table, picked up the crossword I'd started that morning. Behind me, Jason's voice was muffled now, angry but unsure. Brielle's was shriller, indignant, defensive. I didn't listen, didn't rise, didn't ask them to be quiet or leave or apologize. I'd already made other plans. I finished the crossword in 20 minutes. I'd been getting faster, clearer. Then I picked up the phone and called Helen. He's started pushing, I said. Physically? Not yet, but he's circling the edge. Helen paused. Want me to file the first step? Not yet. Virginia, she said, firm now. You don't owe anyone your safety. I know. Then why wait? I glanced out the window. Jason was on the curb, smoking, talking fast on his phone. Probably to his friend with the business idea who wore ankle monitors. Because I want them to think they've still got a chance. People get reckless when they think they're winning. Helen sighed. All right. But when you're ready, it'll move fast. Are you prepared for that? I looked down at my hands, calloused, strong, still steady. I've been prepared for 20 years, I said. That night they didn't speak to me, not even during dinner. Jason reheated pizza. Brielle picked at her salad. I made pot roast and ate it in the sunroom, the door closed behind me. And when I went to bed, I slipped the USB drive out from behind the photo frame, plugged it into my laptop, and backed up the new footage. Jason had a temper, the kind that showed in how he slammed cabinets, how he pressed just a little too hard on the steering wheel, how he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. And soon, someone else would be watching too. I closed the laptop and turned off the light. Let them sleep easy tonight. I wanted them well rested for what came next. The envelope was thick, heavier than usual. Daniel laid it on the kitchen table like it was a peace offering, or a bribe. I brought something, he said, trying to sound casual. No pressure, Mom. Just something to look at. I didn't touch it. He poured himself a glass of water without asking. Lisa stayed by the door, arms folded, eyes flicking toward the hallway, like she wanted to see if I'd locked the safe again, as if she didn't know it was empty. Daniel sat across from me, folding his hands like he was at a board meeting. I know things have been tense with Jason. Tense? I echoed. He had the nerve to laugh. All right, maybe more than tense. I've talked to him. He's frustrated. Says he doesn't feel trusted. I sipped my tea. He shouldn't. Daniel winced a little. Look, I get it. I really do. But he's trying to change. Brielle, too. They just need support. Stability. I gave them a roof, I said. Heat, water, food, gas money, and a second chance. What else counts as support these days? He sighed. That's not what I meant. I mean legally. Like a clean plan for the future. There it was. The real reason. I pushed the envelope back toward him. And what does this plan look like? He opened it, spread out the documents. Title transfers. Power of attorney. A copy of a new will. Drafted, but not signed. All standard, he said quickly. It keeps everything simple. If anything happens to you, God forbid, it's all organized. No court battles, no guesswork. I scanned the pages. Jason's name, written 3 times. His signature box, waiting. And then I saw it. A clause tucked into the 3rd paragraph, small print. Authorization for financial decisions in the event of increased mental confusion or decline. I looked up slowly. You think I'm confused? No, Daniel said too fast. No, of course not. Lisa stepped forward, smoothing her blouse. It's just precaution, Virginia. Everyone does this now. It's responsible. I stood, pushing my chair back with a scrape. The teacup clinked against its saucer as I picked it up, walked to the sink, and rinsed it clean. I'm 76, I said, drying the cup carefully. Not 96. I manage my accounts, my appointments, my own prescriptions. I do crosswords faster than both of you combined. We're not questioning your competence, Daniel began. Yes, you are, I cut in. And you're doing it with paperwork instead of honesty. Silence. Outside, the wind picked up, sending dry leaves scratching across the window. Lisa tried again, voice gentler. We just worry, that's all. It's not about control. Then why does it end with Jason owning the house? Neither of them answered. I turned, folded the towel neatly, placed it on the counter. You can take the envelope, I said. You can also take a long look at the boy you raised, because the next time I see either of you, I expect you to be more honest, or not come at all. Daniel looked stunned, hurt even, as if I'd slapped him. Lisa stepped forward again, something like irritation flashing across her carefully neutral face. So you'd rather leave everything to strangers? I smiled. If the stranger's name is Justice, then yes. They left 10 minutes later. Lisa didn't say goodbye. Daniel kissed my cheek, but this time his hand trembled when it touched my shoulder. When the door closed behind them, I sat down again at the table. And this time, I opened my own envelope. The one I'd prepared after the last conversation with Helen. Inside, a finalized will, notarized and sealed. Jason's name wasn't in it. Neither was Daniel's or Lisa's, but Eloise, my great-niece who calls every week, who sent me a birthday card with a handwritten letter, her name was there. So was Officer Buckley's, listed as a contact for legal verification. Because I didn't want a war. But I would leave behind a map for anyone who tried to take my life piece by piece. Let them wonder how the old woman had outplayed them. Let them realize too late that I was never confused, just quiet. Tuesday at 4 p.m., like we agreed. Miller's Diner was quieter than usual. The lunch rush had faded, and the early dinner crowd hadn't yet shuffled in. The jukebox was silent, the only sounds coming from the hum of the cooler and the gentle clatter of Diane stacking saucers behind the counter. I took my usual seat by the window. No coffee this time, just water with lemon. I needed a clear head. At 4:02, Officer Buckley walked in. Still in uniform today. He looked around briefly, then spotted me and came over, his expression unreadable. "You ready?" he asked. I didn't nod, just slid the envelope across the table. He opened it without ceremony. Inside were 3 things: a flash drive, clearly labeled Sept 28, Oct 12, footage. A notarized statement from me outlining incidents of financial coercion, intimidation, and unauthorized access to my accounts. A list of known aliases for Brielle, updated with a new one I'd discovered through a friend in the library who liked poking around online. Buckley's face didn't change as he read, but I saw something in his shoulders shift. A straightening, a tightening. He wasn't just being polite anymore. He was engaged. "Do you want to file formally?" he asked. "Not yet, but I want it on record, every last detail, every breath." He nodded slowly. "This," he said, tapping the flash drive, "could be enough to trigger a review from Adult Protective Services. I know I want it to be clean, quiet if possible. No arrests yet? Only if they force me." He leaned back. "What happens if they find out you've been recording?" "They won't," I said. "Jason barely knows how to check voicemail." "And Brielle? She thinks cunning is wearing sunglasses indoors." He gave a small smile. Not amused, impressed. "Okay," he said. "I'll log this tonight. Keep it unofficial for now, flagged for escalation." He paused, his tone softening. "You sure about all this, Virginia? It's not just money you're cutting them off from. It's the last shreds of what they think is theirs." "I'm not cutting them off," I said, my voice steady. "They walked away a long time ago. I'm just turning off the lights behind them." He nodded. We sat there in silence a moment. 2 people who remembered how the world used to work and didn't much like how it turned out. Finally, I reached into my purse and pulled out one more item. A small white card with the number from my lawyer, Helen Schuster. "Give this to whoever takes the report, if you're not on shift. Helen knows everything. She's ready." Buckley took the card and tucked it carefully into his notebook. "Anything else?" "Yes," I said, standing slowly, bones aching in the quiet way they always did around sunset. "Next week, I want you to call me. Not because something's gone wrong, but because I want to hear your voice when you tell me it started." He raised his eyebrows. "The investigation?" I clarified. "When they finally look, when they realize she isn't just some forgetful old woman with an open wallet." "I'll call," he said. "And Virginia?" "Yes?" "They're not going to see it coming." I turned to leave, coat over my arm, purse slung just right. At the door, Diane waved at me, but I saw her eyes flick toward Buckley. She was curious. Small towns always are. Let them wonder. Let them gossip over their pancakes and burnt coffee, because I wasn't the woman they thought I was, and neither were they. Not anymore. They started watching me like I was the one with something to hide. It began small. Jason would glance up from his phone when I left a room, then glance down again like nothing happened. Brielle lingered near the hallway when I took my evening calls, pretending to clean her nails. They never said anything directly. They didn't have to. The house had grown thick with suspicion, like cigarette smoke clinging to the walls. I played dumb. I let my voice shake a little more. Let my hands fumble with the kettle on purpose. Once, I even asked Jason how to restart the Wi-Fi, though I could have done it blindfolded. They needed to believe I was slipping. Because people who think you're slipping stop being careful. The cameras helped. Motion activated, discreet. No blinking lights. I'd placed one inside the kitchen wall clock, another in the den behind the vent, and the third tucked inside an old ceramic vase near the hallway. A piece no one ever looked at, but that had a perfect angle of the front door. Every morning, I checked the footage before they woke up. Every night, I backed it up before bed. I had hours of Jason checking my mail, him digging through my drawers when I was at the pharmacy, Brielle trying to unlock the garage cabinet where I used to keep the household records. She didn't know I'd moved those months ago. I had recordings of whispers through thin walls, of Brielle saying, "She's hiding something. I can feel it." And Jason replying, "I'll get it out of her. She can't live forever." They weren't smart enough to know the doorbell had a mic too. I didn't cry when I heard that part. I didn't even flinch. I wrote it down, time-stamped it, and emailed it to Helen and Officer Buckley with the subject line, "Just in case." But I also started preparing for the next step. Because watching someone closely means they miss what's right in front of them. I began taking daily walks again, the long route around the block and past the Methodist church, where the benches smell like old hymns and wood polish. I made a point of stopping to talk to people. The mailman, Mrs. Darlene on her porch with her crossword, the teenage cashier from the gas station whose name I didn't know, but who always called me ma'am without sounding sarcastic. Jason didn't like that. "You walk in so much lately," he said one night, stirring instant noodles like it was gourmet. "Trying to train for a marathon or something?" I smiled. "Trying to outlive you?" He didn't laugh. He'd started looking over my shoulder at everything. My receipts, my phone screen, my pill bottles. One afternoon, I caught him in my room, said he was looking for the vacuum. I told him it was always in the hallway closet. He shrugged. Forgot. No one forgets where the vacuum is when they've lived in a place for 10 months. That night, I made a new label for the bottle in my medicine cabinet. Swapped it with the real one, which I hid in a tin of flour. Let Jason think I was taking the wrong dosage for my memory. Let Brielle mention to Lisa during her loud phone calls, "She's been foggier lately, right?" The house became a stage, and I let them direct their own downfall. In the silence of the night, I sometimes imagined how it would unfold, how they'd be sitting there smugly, thinking they'd pulled it off, thinking they were about to trick a judge or a caseworker into handing them control of everything. And then, the footage, the records, the voice on the line saying, "We have what we need." But I wasn't rushing. A trap isn't just about what you catch, it's about how long you can wait before it springs. It was the phone call that cracked the silence open. Late Thursday morning, just after I'd finished folding laundry, the landline rang. Hardly anyone used it anymore. It only rang for dentists, scams, and the occasional church fundraiser. But this time, it was a voice I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Rowland? This is Ellie Marston, Social Services Liaison with the Department of Adult Protective Services. I'm calling about a report we received." I didn't move. Not at first. Jason's voice floated in from the other room, yelling at the television. Brielle was in the backyard, arguing with someone on her speakerphone again. Likely the same friend who once called me the antique. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm listening." "We received some information that prompted a preliminary review. Financial manipulation, potential coercion, unsafe living conditions. Does that sound familiar to you, ma'am?" "Yes," I said again. It does. The line was quiet for a moment, like she was surprised I wasn't denying it. Would you be willing to meet with one of our representatives in person? Discreetly. No records visible on their car. No uniforms. I'd appreciate that. She gave me a name and a time. Monday, 10 a.m. I wrote it down in the corner of the crossword puzzle I'd already finished that morning. Pen, not pencil. Will you be alone at that time? She asked. I paused. I will be. After I hung up, I sat on the couch, heart ticking in my chest like a metronome, steady but fast. They were listening. Not just Officer Buckley or Helen, but the state. Real eyes now, real pressure. Something that couldn't be shrugged off with a laugh or a, she's just confused. Jason must have felt it. That afternoon, he was quieter than usual. Less bluster, more lurking, watching me from doorways, checking his phone too often. Brielle had taken to locking her purse, as if I were the one sneaking through her things. When the mail arrived, Jason grabbed it before I could. I let him. That envelope was empty. I'd sent the real notice from the power company to Eloise's house with a return address in her name. Let them keep chasing ghosts. But what I hadn't expected, what chilled me more than all of it, came that evening. Jason knocked on my bedroom door. He never knocked. Yeah? I called, keeping my tone flat. He opened the door partway, hovered like he didn't quite want to enter. Hey, just wondering, have you been talking to anyone? Like, outside? I looked up from my knitting. You mean like God? He laughed, but it was hollow. I mean, you've been out and about. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm old, not dead, I said calmly. And if I decide to talk to someone, I will. Unless that bothers you. His jaw tightened. Of course not. He stepped back, closed the door gently. Too gently. Something in that moment clicked. He wasn't angry anymore. He was nervous, which meant he'd started to understand what was coming. Maybe a neighbor said something. Maybe he noticed Buckley's cruiser idling down the block one morning. Or maybe Brielle, for all her smugness, had picked up on the wrong person asking the right questions. Either way, they felt it now. The shift. The weight of all the things they thought they'd gotten away with starting to press back down. I got up, turned off the light, and sat by the window, watching the street. It was quiet. Most of the neighborhood had gone inside, porch lights blinking on like little sentinels in the dark. That Monday meeting couldn't come fast enough. But until then, I would keep acting my part. The confused old woman, just foggy enough to be underestimated, just fragile enough to be ignored. Because they weren't just watching me anymore. They were waiting for the hammer to fall. And I was the one who would let it drop. You think I don't know my own blood? It came out quieter than I meant, but it cut deeper that way. Daniel stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, trying to look calm. But his mouth was tight, his eyes wild. He was unraveling, thread by thread. He'd come over unannounced that morning, said he wanted to clear the air. What he really wanted was to get ahead of something. Maybe the investigation, maybe the growing whispers, maybe just the smell of judgment he must have finally started to notice. I'm just saying, he began. There's a lot going on. People are talking. Jason's upset. Brielle says you're acting different. I set the spoon down in the sink and turned to face him fully. Brielle thinks ordering DoorDash twice a day is independence. I'm not sure her opinion counts. He didn't smile. Mom, come on. No, I said. You come on. You come into my house, stand in my kitchen, and ask questions like I've lost touch. Like I've forgotten what kind of man my son turned into. As if I haven't watched you pull away year by year, phone call by phone call. I've always tried. No, I interrupted. You've always needed. The room went still. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to pause. I gave you tuition when your scholarship ran out. I paid for your first car after you wrecked the one you couldn't afford. I wrote checks for braces, dance recitals, even your second honeymoon when Lisa said she needed closure in Hawaii. He looked down, jaw working. I didn't stop. But I never asked for much. I never wanted praise or postcards, just honesty. And maybe a visit on my birthday that didn't feel like a tax audit. Daniel looked up, voice brittle. This isn't about birthdays. You're right. It's about trust. And respect. And the fact that you've been pretending not to see what Jason's been doing to me. I didn't know. You did. His shoulders sagged then, like something in him gave out. I thought maybe you were exaggerating. You've always been strong. I didn't think you'd let it get this far. I took a step closer, not to intimidate him, just to make sure he couldn't dodge the truth. You didn't think because you didn't want to. You looked away because looking meant choosing, and choosing meant risking your comfort. He swallowed hard. What do you want me to do now? Nothing, I said. Mom, I don't want apologies. I don't want letters or flowers or another half-hearted check-in over soup. I want you to know that when this all comes to light, when the cameras and the files and the signed statements pile up, I won't be protecting you. He blinked. What? You enabled him, I said quietly. You looked the other way. That's how rot spreads. Through silence. The sound of a car door slammed outside, Brielle's voice shouting at someone on the phone again. Daniel flinched. I didn't mean for it to go this way. Neither did I said. But here we are. He took a deep breath, then another, but he didn't speak. I walked past him, picked up the envelope sitting on the table, the one from APS, confirming the upcoming home review. I handed it to him. They're coming Monday. I've told them everything. And I've got more than enough to show them. He took the envelope, stared at it like it might bite him. I don't want to be in the middle of this. You already are. He opened his mouth, closed it, then left without saying goodbye. That's how I knew it was real now. The performance was over. The script shredded. He didn't try to hug me. He didn't even try to lie. And I didn't feel sorry. I watched from the window as he got into his car, hands tight on the wheel. He drove off faster than he should have, tires chirping on the pavement. I wondered what Lisa would say when he told her I was no longer playing the part. It was almost noon. I made myself tea and added honey. I didn't tremble. Because once you've been underestimated for long enough, you start to understand the power of being feared instead. I left the letter on the mantel where he'd have to see it, right in front of the framed photo of us from 12 years ago, back when he still smiled like he meant it, when he still called me Grandma Ginny instead of just, hey. Jason came home late. I heard the way his boots hit the porch, the irritation in the way the door shut behind him. He'd had one of those days, either a failed hustle or a friend who owed him and didn't pay. Maybe both. I didn't come out of my room. I just listened. He saw the envelope almost immediately. I heard him mutter something, paper sliding free, the creak of the armchair as he sat down to read. It wasn't long. Just a single page. Jason, this is the last kindness I'll offer you that isn't required by law. You have 3 days to leave my home. You and Brielle both. No discussion, no negotiation, no threats. I know what you've done. I have proof. I have protection. And I no longer have the need to carry your lies in silence. You are not the boy I rocked to sleep. You are not the man I prayed you'd become. And you are not welcome here anymore. Leave with what little dignity you still own. Or stay and lose the rest when the police arrive. Virginia. I heard the paper crinkle in his hand. Then nothing. Then footsteps. Fast ones. He stormed down the hallway and banged on my bedroom door. What is this? I didn't open it. A letter. You know how to read. Are you serious right now? As a coronary? You can't just kick me out. I live here. No, I said, voice calm but firm. You've been squatting, rent-free, consequence-free. I didn't sign up for that. He slammed his palm against the door. You think this'll hold up? You think some sob story to the cops is going to get me thrown out? I don't need a story, I said. I have records, videos, witnesses, bank logs, and they've already been submitted. Silence. Then quieter. You really did that? I did. I could hear him breathing through the wood. Heavy. Shaky. I'm your grandson. And I was your grandmother, I said. Until you made me your mark instead. I waited. No more shouting, no sobbing either. Just footsteps, slower now, retreating down the hall. A door slammed. The walls vibrated. Outside, the wind was picking up. Leaves scraping across the porch like something trying to claw its way in. I stayed where I was, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes on the window, heart like a quiet drum in my chest. The next morning, he was gone. Not permanently, I knew that. His bag was still in the corner. Brielle's hideous pink slippers still by the back door. But he didn't sleep here that night. Brielle didn't say a word. She made herself coffee, slammed the cabinet doors harder than usual, then left without brushing her hair. That was her version of protest. Sloppy exits. The house was still for the first time in weeks. I moved through it, like I was remembering how to breathe in a room that wasn't filled with tension. I wiped down the counters. I dusted the photo frames. I opened every window in the house and let the cold air roll through like judgment. And then I stood in the living room, in front of the fireplace, where the photo still sat. Jason and me, 12 years younger, frozen in a lie. I didn't cry, but I did whisper, you still had a chance. Because part of me had meant it. The letter wasn't just for drama. It was an offer. One last open door before it became a wall, but he didn't take it, and now I wouldn't hold it open anymore. They came in the morning, quietly, efficiently. No sirens, no drama. Just 2 officers in plain clothes and a woman from Adult Protective Services with a clipboard and a voice that sounded like it had practiced being soft. I offered them coffee. They declined. I offered chairs. They accepted. Jason wasn't home. Brielle was. She came downstairs half-dressed, mascara smudged from sleep, and the second she saw the badges, her face froze like wax under cold light. What's going on? She asked, already defensive. The woman, Ellie, I think her name was, turned gently to her. You must be Ms. Rayner. We're here regarding some concerns raised about this household. Brielle looked at me, then at the officers. Is this a joke? I didn't answer. I sat in the corner of the room with my tea, hands folded in my lap. The lead officer, a man named Kwan, opened his notepad. We have documentation suggesting financial abuse, coercion, and possible narcotics activity linked to this address. Brielle scoffed. What, from her? I stayed quiet. Ellie interjected. We've reviewed submitted video evidence, financial records, and statements. This is a welfare check and a formal beginning to what could become a criminal investigation. Brielle laughed once, but there was no humor in it. This is insane. She's just old and paranoid. Would you mind showing us to your room? Officer Kwan asked. Brielle blinked. Why? We'd like to confirm that nothing of concern is being stored on the property. You may refuse, but we will then pursue a warrant. Something shifted in her posture. Her mouth moved before her brain could catch it. I don't have anything. But she went upstairs. The silence in the room felt thick. Ellie sat beside me, calm. Her eyes scanned the walls, the photos, the worn-out rug near the fireplace. Your home feels lived in, she said. That's a good sign. I smiled faintly. It's been lived through. She gave a slow nod. Would you like me to stay while they search? No, I said, but thank you. 20 minutes passed before the officers came back down, Brielle behind them, pale, arms crossed, not speaking. Officer Kwan looked at Ellie and gave a small nod. She turned to me. Mrs. Rowland, would you be comfortable staying elsewhere for a short period, just for documentation purposes? I blinked. Why? Because we're going to begin the official removal process, and we'd like to ensure your safety while we prepare the warrant. I'm not leaving my home, I said firmly. If anyone should leave, it's them. Kwan cleared his throat. We found enough in that room to start the paperwork. Prescription pills without labels, paraphernalia, and what appears to be forged checks. Brielle flinched. That's not mine, she snapped. I didn't. Jason, he asked me to hold them. You'll have a chance to explain that, Ellie said gently, but you may want to do so with counsel. The front door opened. Jason stepped in, bag of fast food in one hand, car keys in the other. He froze like a deer hit with headlights. Then his face hardened. What the hell is this? Officer Kwan stepped forward. Jason Rowland, we're currently conducting a protective investigation. You're not under arrest at this moment, but you are not free to interfere. Jason's eyes went straight to me. You did this. I didn't move. I warned you. I'm your family. You were. Brielle exploded then. You left that stuff in my room? Are you serious? They're going to charge me. He turned on her. You said you'd hold it. I thought it was weed. You didn't look? They were shouting now, unraveling in real time. The officer stood between them, not intervening, just documenting, waiting. I watched it all with a quiet I had earned. Jason turned back toward me, eyes wide now, not with rage, with fear. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just stopped getting in the way. It was surreal, watching the collapse of something you'd been bracing for so long, like waiting for a tree to fall that had been leaning for years. I felt no glee, no triumph, just release. Officer Kwan stepped outside to radio something in. Ellie turned to me. This will move quickly now. Good, I said. I'm tired of pretending my house was still mine. She gave me a look, not pity, not sympathy, but respect. And that was worth more than any apology I'd never gotten. The house was quiet again. Not the uneasy silence of held breath or doors closing too softly, but the kind that felt earned, like the hush after a long storm, when the rain has finally moved on and the floors stop creaking. Jason and Brielle were gone by noon the next day. Officially, it was called a voluntary removal under pending investigation, but nothing about it felt voluntary on their end. Jason didn't look at me as he left. He carried 2 duffel bags and a face that had finally run out of versions to perform. Brielle cried, but it wasn't sorrow. It was fear mixed with shame. She mumbled something under her breath. Maybe a curse? Maybe a warning? I didn't flinch either way. I watched from the sunroom as they drove off in the dented Honda that still had my old parking permit on the dashboard. I'd cancel that Monday. The door clicked shut behind them. I didn't cry. Instead, I made soup. I peeled potatoes with both hands, boiled the broth slow, added bay leaves the way my mother used to, not because they changed the taste, but because they changed the mood. I made enough for 4 and froze 3 portions. I cleaned. Not in the frantic, desperate way some people do when they've been invaded, but methodically, patiently, room by room. I scrubbed corners. I opened windows. I laundered every pillowcase and burned sage in the hallway, not because I believed in spirits, but because I believed in scent and the power it had to shift the past into something manageable. And then, when all the surfaces were clear, I lit a single candle in the den. That was the room they'd used the most. For TV, for shouting, for secrets they thought I couldn't hear. I sat in my chair, the one they never touched, and I let the wax burn down while Ella Fitzgerald sang softly through the old stereo. It wasn't a celebration. It was a marking. The end of one version of my life, the beginning of another. Around dusk, the phone rang. I recognized the number. Buckley. "Wanted to let you know," he said. "The formal charges are in motion. Possession, fraud, elder coercion. Brielle's got priors. It's not looking good for her." "And Jason?" He hesitated. "He's lawyered up, denying everything. But the evidence is strong, especially the footage." I took a breath. "Then it'll be what it needs to be." He was quiet a moment. Then, "You okay, Virginia?" It was a bigger question than he realized. I looked around the room, at the photographs back in their places, at the stacks of papers now returned to drawers, at the keys resting in a bowl by the door where they belonged. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." We hung up. Later that night, I opened the window in my bedroom and let the autumn air roll in, crisp, cold, smelling like smoke and soil and the end of something heavy. I slept with the door unlocked for the first time in nearly a year, and in the morning, I woke up to quiet that wasn't hollow. It was peaceful. I made toast. I wrote in my notebook. I walked around the yard and waved to Darlene across the fence. I went to the bank and updated my records, then stopped by the diner where Diane said, "You look lighter, hun." I didn't need to explain. Everyone in a town like this knows when a woman's house is hers again. I stood in the driveway with a letter in one hand and a set of keys in the other. Not mine, Jason's. They arrived in a plain envelope, no return address. The note inside was short, written in a rushed, uneven hand. "Guess you win. Hope you're happy." There was no apology, no explanation. Just those 5 words and the keys, the ones he used to carry like trophies. He never understood that it wasn't about the locks. It was about what he thought he was entitled to open. I walked back inside, dropped the keys into the old glass jar near the door where I keep useless things that once meant too much. They clinked against spare buttons, a faded charm bracelet, and the broken clasp from my first handbag. Then I poured myself coffee. No sugar, no milk. And I sat. There were no voices arguing in the hallway, no footsteps at odd hours, no strange calls from banks asking about withdrawals I never made. Just peace. And in that peace, something else bloomed. Not joy, not pride. Just certainty that I had waited long enough, that I had spoken when silence no longer served, that I had protected the woman I used to be and the one I still was. People had started to talk. Neighbors, the women at church, even old Helen, who didn't usually gossip. Some said I'd lost my mind. Others said I'd finally found it. But the truth was simpler. I had stopped accepting what I didn't deserve. A few days later, Eloise came by. She brought me a bag of apples from the orchard and a book on container gardening. She sat on the floor like she used to when she was little, picking lint off her jeans, not rushing to fill the silence. Then she asked, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. The noise? No. The tension? Not even a little. The idea of family? Yes. But not the one that sat in my house uninvited. I miss who they were, I said. But they haven't been those people in a long time. She nodded. I think you're brave. I looked down at my hands, older now, softer in some places, harder in others. No, I said. I just stopped being scared. That night, I lit another candle in the den. Same scent, same chair, and I wrote a letter. Not to Jason, not to Daniel, not to anyone who'd stopped hearing me years ago. It was to myself. You were right to wait. You were right to prepare. You were right to protect yourself even when no one else would. I folded the note and tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. Not because I needed reminding, but because someone, someday, might. Someone might find it. A granddaughter, a niece, a stranger renting this house long after I'm gone. And maybe she'll be in her own kind of silence. Maybe she'll be doubting the way I once did. And maybe reading it will help her believe in the voice she hasn't used yet. So if this story found you, if you read it all the way through, maybe that's not an accident. Maybe it's your sign. If someone's taken what's yours, your space, your voice, your peace, you don't owe them your silence. You owe yourself the fight. If this story spoke to you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell someone who needs to read it. And don't forget, sometimes the quietest women carry the loudest truths.